Transformations, or the deep changes that we need for a more sustainable world, are not a luxury, but are about survivability. The impacts from climate change, such as extreme heat, flooding, are challenging the livability of places around the world. Many of the changes we actually need now, but transformations take time, practice, and experimentation. They also take individuals and groups to come together to chart a collective course of action. Most importantly, it takes a mindset shift. I'm here with Flávia Guerra, a UNU-EHS researcher whose work focuses on zero just carbon cities and citizen participation. So Flávia, my first question to you is, what is a mindset and why is it important for urban transformation in cities?
Thanks, Austin. So when I talk about mindsets, I talk about how people interpret situations and issues, so whether they even see something as a problem, how they see the solutions, whether something is perceived as desirable and possible, and finally, how people see their role in it. So mindsets really shape everyday decisions in cities, not just within local government, but also local NGOs, research organizations like ours. So take climate change, for example. Do these people even see climate change as a problem? Do they feel affected by it? Do they think that they are responsible for it? Do they feel capable of even acting? So in research, what we see is that urban transformations don't just fail because we don't have the right policy in place or the right funding stream or the right technology. They also fail because dominant mindsets really limit what people think they can achieve, and also especially what they feel they can achieve together. So can they even reconcile different interests and different issues? Is climate action compatible with urban development? So these are some of the questions that people struggle with and that can define one's mindset. So we really need, without these mindset shifts, it will be mostly impossible. So if people don't change how they see the problem of climate change, if they don't change the way that they see possible solutions, and if they don't see that their role in it can be perhaps more active, it's very difficult to generate engagement and action.
Okay, so it sounds like the mindset is very much like a baseline of how somebody's feeling in a given moment about sort of climate action. You got into a little bit of the shift, but what does it really mean? What is then next the mindset shift?
I think we need to make it very clear that a mindset shift isn't really about a sudden change in opinion. It's usually something more gradual. So people start interpreting situations differently. They start making decisions differently. And that may change how they act about it. So in my work, I see mindset shifts when people start asking different questions, when they take some responsibility that they were previously maybe avoiding, and when they start engaging with issues or climate change and climate action in this case in different ways. So they start seeing something as more desirable or even possible or more compatible with other issues and other types of interventions. And I think a common misconception that we find in mindsets research, but also just in casual talks, is that people think that just because we have more information about a topic, then our mindsets will shift. Of course, having more information about it is very important, but information alone, it's very unlikely to change mindsets. So you cannot just change how people see a problem. And then another thing is that mindset shifts and behavior change don't always go hand in hand. So that is very, very important. I think another thing is mindset shifts and mindsets aren't just something that is individual, and they're also not linear. So I can change my mindset and then change it again, especially if there isn't the right structural support. Things like policies and institutions and organizational cultures. So if there isn't a change there, it's very difficult for individuals to keep thinking differently and keep working differently. So they might very well resort to old patterns.
Okay, I see. I now see sort of the relationship between the mindset and the shift, and that the shift itself is much more nuanced of an action in itself. And that's why I want to get into a little bit more about how you study this. So what projects do you have going, and how are you actually on the ground working with people to change this, or to understand this?
So we have a very long project, and I think that's very important for mindset shifts, right? Because I said it's a gradual process. So we have this project called Transformative Urban Coalitions, where we assessed individual mindsets. We used those results to form coalitions, and then we've been tracking changes in mindsets within the coalitions. So we've been following these diverse coalitions since 2021. And they're coalitions based in Argentina, in Mexico, and Brazilian cities. And we rely on what we call urban labs. So these are structured places that bring together different types of people, stakeholders. So we have representatives from local government, private sector, NGOs, academia, as well as communities. So we've been doing surveys, we've been doing interviews to collect data, and we've done that in 3 different phases of transformation within these coalitions. So we've done it after what we call coalition building, right in the beginning of forming the coalitions. We've done it during this co-design, shared visioning process, and then later on, more recently, after experimentation and reflection, and also dissemination of the results. And what we found is that, first of all, there's different starting points. So people's mindsets about climate change and climate action is different from the start. We've come up with 3 personas, these archetype mindsets. We've called them the skeptical activist, the optimist technocrat, and the bystander with mixed feelings. They're quite self-explanatory, but we can go into detail if you want to. And we've tracked these different groups of people throughout these different phases of transformation and the processes of the coalitions, and seen how they affect the different groups differently.
And what are perhaps some of the patterns or shifts that you have observed in the project?
A very clear shift and a very interesting one is we saw that when we first came in and we started talking about climate change, people saw it as something very abstract, sometimes like as an afterthought, or even something seen as a luxury. I think it's important to say that we work mostly in low-income and informal urban settlements, like I mentioned, in Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And so we really started seeing a shift when people came together in these initial phases of building a coalition, experimenting with, seeing different perspectives and working through those. And we really saw this. People started making sense of climate change and climate action within their own contexts, and linking it to local needs, like their daily lives, their own priorities, things like heat and thermal comforts and health and quality public spaces, quality of life, that really resonated. So we worked mostly with nature-based solutions, and so people started really understanding and owning the solutions and wanting to do that.
Wow, that sounds quite amazing. I want to go into a little bit more about the coalitions in the labs. These seem to be somewhat of a key enabler. How does that work? It seems like you're bringing together a whole lot of different stakeholders, and how does this really help, enable the shift?
So coalitions don't cause mindset shifts, but they make them likely to happen. So we saw that a lot of the mindset shifts that I was talking about, the one specifically, it comes from being in contact with people that think differently, and also that have different knowledge about different issues, and also different capacities to act. So progress really comes from putting people with diverse mindsets in the same space, rather than trying to shift everyone to think in the same way. So coalitions allow us to do this very well, because they are spaces where, like I said, they change the rules of the game a little bit. You have local government coming together with NGOs, coming together with communities. We have researchers in there, so they can really experiment with different roles, different solutions, and we see that this has very, very positive impacts. I mentioned it a little bit already, but different activities within the coalitions also influence people differently. I told you, like, the bystanders, the skepticals, they reacted really well to the initial phases of, like, mapping the problem together, reaching a consensus about priorities. So that part really changed the mindsets of those types of people. And then the optimist technocrat, they responded way better to experimentation, so hands-on activities and learning by doing. So it worked out really well. But I think I want to come back to a point I made before. So coalitions and this work that is done in the context of projects, it's likely to change mindsets, but we also need to take into consideration the context. So people's social conditions, the political conditions within the country, within the city, people's family situations, people's work situations. There's a lot of factors at play in setting someone's mind towards something and also to shifting it. So the key point here is you cannot force a mindset shift, but you can design the conditions that will make it possible. And then if the learnings from these spaces then are fed into policies and institutions and formal decision-making processes, it's very likely that the mindset shifts can enable real urban transformation, because they don't just stay within the individual, the personal sphere. They can really make an impact and become more durable and affect societal change.
Wow, so it's much more about the realities and bringing those different realities and those different mindsets together and seeing what you can come up with and what sort of advantageous activities that really bring out the chances of change in people. So that's really cool. I guess we'll leave it at a last question for you. Anything that you want to add?
Yeah, so this was all, we touched very superficial on a lot of complex issues. Yep. I think if people are interested, we have papers out. They're all open access. But we also came up with a fun quiz. Austin took it the other day. And it's based on all of our research insights. So if you want to find your own climate mindset and find resources that can guide you in your climate action journey, I think we'll leave the link for that.
Sweet, yeah. I did take the quiz. I'm an optimist technocrat, yeah. It was a very cool quiz. It definitely opened my eyes to how I see climate change and climate action in my daily life, and how I want to be more mindful in understanding those things. So I also encourage you to take it. As she said, we'll leave it in the description or in the comments, and we look forward to bringing you more science talks in the future. Thank you, and thank you, Flavia.